5 minutes until you speak in front of everyone. You look at the table full of people who, any minute now, will be staring at you. And your body, without asking, starts bracing as if there were real danger ahead. Your hands go cold. Your stomach tightens. A voice inside hunts for any excuse to leave. That's fear. And what you do with it in the next few minutes decides whether it stops you or walks with you. Welcome to Doodle Feelings, where we learn to recognize and name what we feel. Today, we're talking about fear. Why it makes everything bigger, what it's trying to tell you, and the one move that brings it back to its real size. Let's start with the first one. Why it makes things bigger. Fear has one trick, always the same. Picture a shadow on the wall. A small object, with the light at just the right angle, throws a huge, twisted shadow that looks like a monster. The real danger, a shaking voice, a forgotten line, is the small object. Fear is the giant shadow. And you don't measure that shadow against the object. You measure it against your own panic. And panic always draws monsters. And it's not just before public speaking. It's any moment when something matters to you and could go wrong. And at night, alone, turning it over, fear feels bigger. With no one to argue back, it swells. The first thing fear does is physical, and it's the opposite of anger. Anger heats you up. Fear cools you down. Blood rushes out of your hands and face. That's why you go pale and your fingers turn cold, and floods into your big leg muscles, loading them to run. Your heart pounds. Your mouth goes dry. Your breathing turns short and high, up in the chest. All in seconds, without you deciding. By the time your mind realizes it's just a room with chairs, your body is already set to run from a tiger, and your senses sharpen at once. You hear more, see more, every detail grows louder. It's your system flipping into alert mode, firing before the thinking part of you can decide if it's real. Sometimes it isn't running at all. It's freezing. The body slams to a stop. The mind goes blank. The voice won't come. That's fear too. Same alarm, different response. That's why it feels so urgent and real. Not weakness, your body protecting you. But something's unfair here. It loaded up to run or fight, and you can do neither. You sit with all that energy and nowhere to send it. That's the trembling. The problem isn't that fear shows up, but that sometimes it protects too much. And here's the strange thing about fear. It warns you, but it doesn't evaluate. It has one job, to scream, "Watch out," as fast as possible. It doesn't stop to measure whether what's coming is a huge danger or a slide that didn't load. In fact, your body sets off the same alarm when the danger is only in your head. Imagining the worst is enough. Heart racing, hands cold, even sitting safe in your chair. So feeling a lot of fear does not mean the danger is big. It means your alarm is fast and overreacts. It's mistaking the shadow for the monster. And your mind makes it worse. It grabs that "watch out" and builds a whole movie of the worst ending. The shaking voice, the laughter, the embarrassment you'll never forget. One warning, and you've seen the full catastrophe. And on top of that, you feel like it all shows. Psychologists tested this with people giving speeches. The speakers were sure everyone could see their nerves, every quiver. But the audience barely noticed. They named it the illusion of transparency. Inside, you feel an earthquake. Outside, people barely feel a breeze. And this doesn't only happen to people afraid of public speaking. It's the job interview. It's typing "I like you" and freezing at the screen. It's the exam you studied for, the talk you've put off for weeks, the medical result you can't open. Different situation, same alarm. If any of those squeezed your chest, this is what we're talking about. So what do you do with an alarm that overreacts? You basically have two moves, and they're opposites. Think of a fear you've had lately. Which one do you choose? The first is the one your body is begging for. Avoid it. You make the excuse, you leave it for later, you walk out. And it works. For 10 seconds. Because every time you run, you teach your brain a lesson. I was right, that was dangerous, that's why we escaped. Avoiding doesn't turn fear off, it feeds it. Every escape makes it bigger and easier to trigger. That's the great misunderstanding. Escaping brings instant relief that feels like proof you were right. But all you trained was your alarm, to scream louder. You avoid once, and speaking gets harder. You avoid again, and soon you're avoiding the meeting too, the call, the question in class. That fear you never looked at closely stays huge forever. The second move is the opposite, and simpler than it sounds. Instead of running from the shadow, you turn on the light, and turning on the light is two concrete questions. The first, What's the worst that can really happen? Not the vague catastrophe, the concrete worst case. My voice shakes. I forget a fact. Someone checks their phone. The second. And what would I do if that happened? I breathe, sip water, glance at my notes, keep going. Nobody dies. Suddenly the monster has a plan. And careful. This isn't positive thinking or telling yourself it'll be fine. It's the opposite, looking the worst case in the eye until it stops being a vague monster and becomes a solvable problem. And naming fear really does calm it. And that's not just a saying. Researchers at the University of California watched it happen on brain scans. Go from "I feel panic" to naming exactly what you fear, and activity in the amygdala, the brain's alarm center, drops. It's strange, but it works. While fear is a huge, shapeless blob, it's in charge. Put it into concrete words, and it shrinks. The vague is scary. What has a name can be faced. With a name and a plan, the shadow returns to its real size. It was a small object all along. The fear doesn't vanish. It's still there, beating, but it stops driving on its own. And there's a bonus. The first time, fear is giant, but once you look closely and see what was really there, you teach your brain something new. Proof that you can. Next time, it fools you less. Now, careful with the opposite. Sometimes the alarm is right. If fear shows up before a real, present danger, a car coming at you, something that would truly hurt you, don't question it. Listen and protect yourself. That's why the two questions do double duty. They shrink inflated fears, and they tell you when fear is real and you must act. The point isn't to never feel fear. It's to tell when fear exaggerates and when it's right. Notice the difference. Running leaves the fear untouched, bigger every time. Turning on the light, naming the worst case and your response, brings it back to size. So next time your body goes cold and your stomach tightens before something important, your alarm is doing its job, warning you. Evaluating is up to you. Take a deep breath. That cold in your hands and that trembling aren't an order to run. Just your body warning you, waiting for you to look closely and decide. Ask the two questions. What's the worst that can really happen? And what would I do if it did? And you'll usually find you can handle what you feared. It was inflated panic freezing you. Not to stop feeling, but to be the one deciding again, not the alarm. And it's not about waiting until you're not afraid to act. It's acting with the fear beside you. Smaller, hands off the wheel. Not brave by not feeling, and moving forward anyway. Now tell me, what do you run from, even when deep down, you know the shadow is bigger than the object casting it? Tell me in the comments about a time you turned the light on a fear. I love reading them. If this helped, subscribe and stick around. Here, little by little, we learn to recognize and name what we feel. Next episode, anxiety. Fear's cousin that instead of warning you about a real danger, stays switched on for everything and nothing. See you there.